Katie Godden grew up on a family farm in regional New South Wales. So she knows what it's like coordinating everybody when they're tired and they no longer want to necessarily get together and gel over the things that are hard to bring to the table. She spent 16 years as a teacher before becoming a communications expert, and now she works with family farms and agri dynamics and agri business to help work through all the difficult conversations that we like to avoid, such as succession planning and family dynamics, and all those things that slowly start to tear a family farm apart from the inside out if it's never dealt with. She's trained in NLP and behavioural profiling, runs a program called The Art of Hard Talk, and teams up with her brother, John Law, the financial bloke, in rural succession conversations. This is a conversation that nobody wants to have at the dinner table, but everybody needs to. So let's get into it.
Welcome to Hard Ground. Welcome to Hard Ground.
Welcome, Katie. Thank you so much for coming and spending time with us on Hard Ground.
You are most welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, we are very, very excited to have you. This is a topic very dear to our hearts, and we're going to start off with a pretty hard-hitting question. Why is it so damn hard for people to communicate?
Oh, it is a pretty hard question to answer, and I think that the main reason we look behind it is why do people find it so hard to communicate is because of the fact that we all have different ways in which we receive it and different ways that we interpret the world. And so a lot of that gets in the way of the hard conversations, of most communication. And some of it is even the fact that we just haven't learnt the skills. We've all learnt to talk. We've all learnt to listen. When it comes to engaging with people and actually creating momentum in a conversation, sometimes that skill's not there, particularly when it comes to having conversations that are a little bit more important or a little bit more meaningful than just the average conversation that we have. So I think there's a lot of nuances to it, but generally speaking, I think that'd be the view.
There's a real discomfort that comes from communicating towards like those harder topics and conversations, which you specialise in, Katie. We have the pleasure of also engaging in your services as well to help us sort of unlock some of these things as well, which is super important because we don't necessarily know what we don't know, and what we might uncover inside of ourselves, and it's uncomfortable, and we'd rather not go there. So to sort of, I suppose it sort of goes against our nature in a way, doesn't it? We sort of want to withdraw from anything that's sort of hot.
Well, I think the biggest piece is that we're wired for connection, and anything that threatens that connection feels uncomfortable.
So are you saying that communication is kind of like love languages? We communicate in a certain way and we also receive communication in certain ways, and they can differ.
Yes. So the way it's absolutely yes. And the way I look at it is that when we're communicating, we have our own, what we call a map of the world. We have our own way of seeing the world, experiencing the world, interacting with the world, and we have a particular viewpoint. So we have all these filters inside of our thinking, and everything that we receive from the outside world, so anything that's communicated with us, we're interpreting it through all of those filters. And your filter, Steph, is very different to Josh's filter, which is very different to my filter. And what tends to happen is when there is a meeting of two different maps, then what can happen is we can either go straight past each other and just not get it. So it's kind of like you're reading the Sydney map and I'm reading the Brisbane map. And it's like these two worlds just are totally bypassing each other. Sometimes the maps will actually overlap. And if our maps overlap, the conversation tends to be a lot easier because we're coming from similar values, similar belief systems, similar ideals in life and the way that things should be, in inverted commas. And so when we have people that are, there are some people who are more inclined to have difficult conversations and find it easier, and there are other people who don't so much. So yes, I would say it's like love languages for sure, in that the way that I receive communication, I'm quite a literal person. And so whereas I've got friends who are really, they just infer and they read something into my language, when sometimes I'll just say something and actually, no, that's just matter of fact.
Is it a yeah, absolutely. Is it sort of like down to like personality types as well, Katie? Like when I think about communication, but like as you were saying, the hard conversations, some people find it easier to go into difficult conversations than others. I find it difficult to do bookwork. I can't, like, it wears me out. I start looking at spreadsheets and I get a nosebleed.
Yeah.
Okay. And yet some people that are extremely apt at that, and you then raise a topic of conversation that is a little bit deeper or whatnot, and they start getting a nosebleed. And it's like, okay, so obviously there's, not everyone's built the same. You can't expect everybody to dive into these hard conversations with the necessary ease of some, because sometimes you always got, it's funny in a family dynamic, you've got like one person's ready to dive in and like, let's get this done. The other one's like, ugh! And it's trying to make sure that there's a certain amount of empathy across the board that says, not everybody's working like you. Not everybody's going to receive this like you. There needs to be a certain amount of tact around that.
Yeah, I like to think of it as conversational agility. And those people who are the most agile in their communication or their conversations are the ones that are going to be able to navigate these sort of situations easier. Not saying that it's going to be easy, but there just tends to be more free flow, because you can adapt to the way the other person's speaking. Because bringing it back to personalities, I think some of it is personality, some of it is behavioural traits. So we each have this own innate behavioural traits that are natural and easy for us. So for me, I'm the same as you. Confrontation is not my favourite thing to do. So I spent a lot of time learning how to prevent a lot of miscommunication. Because if I can be the person at the forefront, if I can be the person who's proactive around communication, so just simply understanding other people's behaviours and the way that they think, then that gives me a little step into an insight into their world, so that I can have more empathy and I can move according to what they need in that conversation, whilst, though, this is really important, whilst also staying true to what I need and what I believe. So my true thought process is that for real communication to take place, it's not about us coming in people pleasing and just being the most flexible for everybody else. It's like, what is my core? What is important to me? And then how do I share that with others so that they can hear it? Because if you can't, when we think about it, we can't really have someone who speaks French and someone who speaks English and you hold a conversation.
No.
There needs to be, we can read body language, we can understand tonality, all of those things are read first. What we need to do is actually get on the same page. And whether that's us making slight adjustments, because like you said, there are some people who are fast thinkers, fast paced, make decisions quickly, see the bigger picture, and they can go in and go hard and fast. There are other people that really thrive on the connection, and they need you to warm up a little bit. They need you to connect with them as a human before you can go into that conversation. There are others that need to feel safe within the conversation before they'll even open up. If they don't feel safe in that conversation for whatever reason, they will just shut down and say nothing. And they might do this. They might politely nod, even if they disagree. And then we've got others that they will try and ask a lot of questions because they want to get understanding. And sometimes people can find that offensive. So the biggest thing is that the way that we speak is always being interpreted, and the way others speak is always being interpreted. And so I know there's been a lot of people who are question askers, and they go into different settings, either in families or in business, and they need to ask a lot of questions, even in hard conversations. And people get upset because they think that they are trying to prove a point. They think that they're diving in and criticising. They think, insert whatever it is, when really all that person's doing is trying to understand what's actually happening so they can make sense of it and make an informed decision.
Yeah.
Because without that, it's kind of like you're just trying to force broccoli into a kid's mouth. It just doesn't work.
No, I get that. So, Katie, one of the things I wanted to ask you was, off the back of that, is really what's the consequences associated with not communicating?
There's a lot of nuances that can happen. And here's the thing that a lot of people don't realise is that the consequences come as a compound effect. So, for example, if people are not open to speaking up and saying what's actually on their hearts, then the compound effect of that at the time might not seem like much. But what it does is it slowly erodes trust. It slowly builds resentment. It slowly cracks and fractures the whole relationship that we have. And if we think about it as well, if people are very forthright and very direct and very blunt with their communication, which can happen, is that too also makes that other person feel like they're not heard, they're not valued, and all of that absolutely melts away at the relationship and the trust bucket. I always talk to people about making sure that our trust bucket is filled up, and not just in communication, but in that day-to-day interactions with people. And if we don't keep filling that trust bucket up, then when it comes to having hard conversations, it's much more difficult because you're working from an empty space rather than a full space.
That really resonates with me, Katie, that filling up the trust bucket. I think, just in a marriage, even if you feel seen by your partner on the day-to-day, when you have to have difficult conversations, it's not so scary, it's not so hard, because you've got this entire backlog of confirmation that you're loved and you're held and you're cherished. So those difficult conversations can be a lot easier.
Yeah, they absolutely can. And I even think with our kids as well. I've got 2 teenage boys. And so one of my goals is to be connected with them over a lifetime and beyond. And for me to do that, it's not just about how I speak with them. It's also about how I interact with them day to day, moment to moment. How do I respond when something hard does come up? Am I always in solution mode? Because I am a solution person. And so I've got to make sure that I temper that down for what do they actually need.
Yeah.
Because we all want to be heard. The main thing that I have seen across many families, across many businesses and the people that I work with, the biggest problem that we have is that people do not feel like they are heard.
That's right. Yeah.
And that is the biggest challenge that we face in miscommunication.
It's a big issue because as much as it's a responsibility for people to listen, it's just as big a responsibility for those who are speaking, recognizing that they necessarily might be heard. It's very hard when their emotions are involved for people to stop already talking, already thinking what's being said, and just actually sit, be present. It's like the game of presence is almost being thrown out the window because we sort of have an agenda, or we have an expectation, or we have a defensiveness, or we have an aggression, or whatever is going on in the background, and that comes to the forefront first of all. And usually, well, I know from experience, is that it's like knives are out. Basically, knives are out, walls are up, and you're like, get off my wall, get off my back, whatever, you just think this, and all these sorts of things come into play because, and the whole breakdown, the whole process of communication breaks down right there and then, and you just can't, I don't know how many of our listeners right now are experiencing this situation inside of their operations or organizations where you feel like whatever you say, okay, you might say the word blue, they hear yellow.
Yes.
You say up, they hear down. And you're thinking, am I going mad, or is what's going on? Truly, what do you say to somebody who's experiencing something like that, Katie?
That's a really tough one because the feeling of that is raw, and it's hard hitting, and it's uncomfortable. What I think, and from my experience, is the greatest gift I've given myself is the gift of getting myself in the right mind before I approach a conversation. So if I know that a conversation is coming that is going to be uncomfortable, then I need to get myself in the right frame of mind. And one of those things that I do is to make sure that I know the outcome of this conversation. So this is where planning comes in, where planning is really important. And if you know that you're going to be involved in some difficult conversations, it's coming up with a strategic kind of plan to it. It sounds like it's very prescribed, and I think sometimes it needs to be. So even for the smallest of conversations, having 2 teenage boys, you can imagine the kind of conversations that we need to have. And some of those are uncomfortable for them and for me. And so it's like getting myself and thinking about, okay, what's really important?
But can I just clarify? Can I clarify that though, Katie? Are you saying to have a goal in mind, but then would that not sort of go against what we were talking about before in not coming to the table with the expectation of where you want the conversation to go?
Expectation and outcome are different.
Okay.
For me, in a conversation. So an outcome that you have is not something that has to happen. It's something that needs to happen for you. Mm-hmm. So for example, I worked with a client and she was going to have a really difficult conversation with one of her parents. And she needed to have this conversation a long time ago. However, she got the courage to go in because she knew a conversation was coming up. And we unpacked what she actually wanted from the conversation. And some of it was, I need an apology, I need them to do this thing, I need them to do that thing, which is all the expectations that they have. Mm-hmm. Whereas for her, what the outcome was that she needed to make sure that she said everything that was on her heart. And because the only thing we can control in a conversation is us. Mm-hmm. And so for her, we had strategies for if the conversation went left or right in a different direction than where she thought it was going to go. We set the conversation up so that it had a framework to guide it, because I'm sure either you guys or your listeners here would know that sometimes when we come into a conversation, we're not coming into that conversation with the problem at hand. It's usually the problem at hand and things from the past and the history. Yes. So it's kind of like we grab history by the horns and we pull it forward with us into this conversation.
Yeah.
And that's where we start to have this build-up of defensiveness, of trying to be right, because we're usually fighting to be right in whatever it is for us. So the outcome is more along like, and this is the question I ask my client, so if your listeners want to write this down, is what do I need from this conversation to feel like I am complete? What do I need from this conversation to feel like I'm complete? Because the conversations aren't always going to go the way you want them to, and you're not always going to get the outcome that you want to. That's just reality.
So acknowledging that you're not it goes whichever way it goes, but you've done all you can do. So you feel complete in that. Yeah, okay. I like that.
Yes. Yeah.
So Katie, can I ask then, what if you find yourself in a family, especially, because we like to bring things back to farming, succession, difficult conversations in small family businesses, which is relevant across the board. Mm-hmm. What happens if you find yourself part of a family or part of a group, part of a small business where you're a natural communicator, but you've got a group of non-communicators with you?
Oh, that's a big question, Steph. And you're right, it does happen a lot. What I have found is that us working on our communication and leading the way tends to have a larger impact than we realise. Mm. And so for me, if I look at myself with my mum and dad, say mum and dad are on the farm, I'm the only person that has done communication training. Now, I used to think I was an amazing communicator because I was in education. I was talking to big crowds. I've been public speaking since I was a tiny tot. And I thought, yeah, got this nailed. And then I actually went to learn and I went, I'm there's room for growth for me. And so I started to grow. I started to learn. And as I learnt, I would also share. I remember when I was learning behavioural profiling, I would purposefully go and sit in my lounge room and listen to some of the audio trainings. My son, who was only about, I think, 8 or 9 at the time, he was sitting beside me and he would ask me about it. And so I'd get to share with him some of the information. Now, what I've found is if we try and force other people to communicate the way we want to, it doesn't work. I don't know about you guys, but I don't necessarily want to be told what to do. What I can do, though, is I can lead the way. And so I can use language that holds my boundaries. I can open conversations with a frame. I get to pause a conversation if it feels like it's unproductive. I get to learn those skills to redirect, to reframe, to also apologize. If I say something, I show how to apologize and how to, what I call, repair the relationship. Because just like I always think of, a lot of people avoid confrontation, or they avoid these difficult conversations because they think it's going to tear us apart. That's the language that I hear.
Yeah, which is really at the heart of what a lot of family organisations are afraid of as well. It's like it's why a lot of them go quietly into the dark. Like a lot of the dads will, just pull out because they just don't want it to get any worse. Or had a Barney in the past, or it's been a lot of pain associated with it. They can sort of see that the fractures are just going to open up. So the best thing to do is just stop. Like you're in a minefield. Just stop moving, and you won't pull up any further. Yeah.
And go like a deer in headlights. So I say nothing and I just freeze. And it's like, well, I'm better to say nothing than to say anything at all. And then in the long run, what we spoke about earlier, the cost of inaction, of lack of communication just is far worse long term rather than repairing quickly.
So it's really a matter of leadership. There's a leadership element inside of this that needs to be recognised. It's one thing to sit inside of the pit that you find yourself in regarding this sort of a stalemate that we can, like, a bit of a purgatory, but it's another thing to be constantly caught up inside of your victim mentality and saying, I deserve to be apologised to, or I deserve to make, to be recognised for the pain I've been through, so that I can feel validated in where I'm at. Because if we come from that angle, and it might be true, I'm not saying that it's not, it could absolutely be true. In a lot of cases it is true. But, that's the element that sucks. But it really is it. You've got to make a decision. Are you wanting this to progress? And if you do, suck it up. Recognize that someone needs to lead the conversation. And like you were saying there, Katie, it's like, saying, I have to be careful the way that I show up to a conversation. I have to be the one that says, I have to be careful that I don't say anything inflammatory or triggering. I have to be able to apologize if I do. Which is that some of us have got such a bee in our bonnet and an axe to grind. That seems like the furthest thing. I'd rather, skin a cat alive and then say sorry.
Poor cat.
I know.
Yeah, poor cat. I know. I use cat metaphors too. Don't worry, I do it all the time.
But I think what you're saying really there, Katie, is effective communication is a skill that you can learn and that can be taught, and assuming that we're born with good communication skills is rather folly.
Yes, 100% correct. That is true.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. We are only a product of the behaviour of communication that we've been around.
Okay.
So actually that's a good segue to my next kind of interest in your background, Katie. And obviously we know Ben, we've had Ben on the show. We absolutely think he's a legend. What brought you and Ben to both end up being within this communication field? Like you're an expert in communication, he's in succession and helping families navigate this. And I'd love for you to also explain where you pop up in the line of the succession process, because
what brought you into this, like both of you? With you're both in
you're
this
both
area.
It's like, very interesting that you both ended up in this industry.
Difficult area to be a part of and to dive into, and yet you both seem to have this natural capacity and a desire to affect this specific area, and like what brought you here?
It's so fascinating. It baffles me all the time too that the two of us, who Ben and I are very similar in our thinking, and we always have been growing up. I'm 5 years younger than him, so I was always the little sister. I think what really brought the two of us to this place is that we have been born and bred and lived on the land. And we have seen conversations that have not taken place and the impact that that has had. And we have seen conversations or heard of conversations that have happened that have absolutely broken relationships. And one of the things that I know Ben and I both have in common is the fact that we don't want that to happen again.
Is that something that you experienced personally? Okay.
Yeah. So with one part of our family, the family completely split and broke and had a moment where they are no longer in communication. And so I think along the way, it's like when you have experienced scenarios or situations that have not gone the way you would anticipate them to go, and it's been something else, I think that leaves a little mark on you. A little mark to sort of say, well, gosh, I don't want that again. I don't want that to happen. And for me, it hasn't always been the thing, because for a really long time, I just wanted to help people. My mission has always been to help people, and Ben's the same. So both of us have wanted to help people. Both of us have looked at, like, where are our grassroots? Where do our hearts sit? And our hearts sit in family and our hearts sit in the land, whether it be any sort of situation. We've seen what good communication looks like, and we've also seen what lack of communication looks like. And I'm not going to say it's bad, because I just think it's lacking. I want your listeners to really understand that communication is a dance and it's a dynamic. And although sometimes things don't land the way we want them to, it doesn't always, and I'm going to be really careful with my language here, it doesn't always mean that it's bad. It's only up to us. We interpret whether a conversation or communication is good or bad. That's our internal filter. And I'm not, please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there aren't moments where people communicate in a way that is utterly disrespectful and appalling or hurtful and those sort of things. I'm not saying that that's not there. I think in a lot of the conversations, there's all sorts of different language features that people use that is a detriment to other humans. I think generally, though, especially as a community, as a people who are wanting to do great things on the planet, I think that it's sometimes the mislabeling of communication that can create a feeling inside of us. So if we say, oh, they're really bad at communication, maybe they're just not experienced at it. Right? Or if they're very blunt, maybe it hurts so much that they're just not sure how to actually say it in a way that lands or feels respectful to others.
Would you say, sorry, Katie, would you say that you can come back from that though? You don't have to share your personal scenario, but with the family the part of your family that did have that sort of situation occur and that bust up happen, can you come back together? Is there a way for people to find their way back when communication or lack thereof has broken that family apart?
I'm a true believer that it's mendable. Absolutely. I'm a true believer that it's mendable. It just depends on who's involved in it and what they want. If they are willing to do the work, if they're willing to move through the discomfort, if they're willing to have more open conversations, it depends on what's happened, what's come across, what's been said. I think it's so nuanced that I couldn't give you a clear answer on that. But my true belief, and maybe it's an ideology that others will disagree with, which is perfectly fine. I do believe that everything is repairable. It may take a lot longer and it may take a lot more intention, willingness, curiosity, openness, exploration, that I can't just say Yes, it absolutely can, because it will depend on the unique situation. And that's the thing in communication, you know, everything is like its own little thumbprint. There's none of them are the same. And so one of the challenges I face is that what I particularly like to do is hear exactly the situational scenario that's going on and where the pressure points are, and then we unravel it from there.
It's something that I think, you know, like talking about what you were saying there, Steph, regarding can it be repairable? There needs to be a will. There really needs to be a will to want it. There has to be a deep value and a deep connection, and a love that is prepared to suffer through what needs to be suffered through to see reconciliation and a restoration accordingly. And there's an interesting thing, because when we talk about our families and the family business, and that's basically what we're sort of focusing on a lot of, is that there has to be, you know, we're bound by love for one another, love inside of the family, love for what we're doing. And this is very interesting. I heard this is something that's quite interesting. I've adopted it myself, but what is love? Love is suffering. You have to be prepared to suffer. And if you think about it, I love, for what I love, I suffer for it, 100%, willingly suffer for it. And if we're not prepared to suffer for, you know, our own pride, our own egos, our own need to be right, our own sense of certainty, or even maybe, you know, even questioning our identities in the middle of it all, because it's quite a large landscape out there. And I think like we can come up with a whole lot of hodgepodge associated with what sort of decides to come in here, but bringing it back down to the bones of it, it's like, okay, do we love one another enough to suffer beyond that, and to communicate, and to come to the table in a place that restores us for the years going forward, but also the future for our children's, and for the sake of what, you know, legacy might still remain to us and those who come after us. So it's a big question.
We hear a lot of people say that family is everything, and yet, like you're both saying, the willingness to push through the difficult conversations for the sake of that family is where a lot of people, that's where the buck stops. That's the line they won't cross, and they'll back out.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I want to add to what you're saying too is the fact that it takes a willingness, but it also takes patience.
So much patience.
So much patience, because, and this is where the work happens for us. So I'm a true believer that communication isn't just the words that we use, the mechanics behind it, the frameworks and all of that. It's actually comes back to who we are as a human and us doing the work on us. I think that because all of our communication is literally a behaviour, and it's a behaviour driven by what's happening as a human underneath all of that. It's driven by that. You know, I think that willingness is so important, and that patience. And I think there's also a level of acceptance that needs to come through as well. And I think for many reasons, because, you know, of course, there are going to be reasons why it's not okay to continue with the communication if safety is at stake. You know, something like that. Like I always, people say to me, oh, can everything be repaired? And it's like, well, is it safe to? Is it okay to?
Yep.
And so I think I just want to make sure that that's also here, because I think that's important. In the majority of families that we look at, though, it is definitely that willingness, that patience, and it's also about us understanding others at such a deep level that we can navigate through the uncertainty with them, because the biggest thing that's there is there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of uncertainty, and that's one of the greatest challenges that we as humans face, is being able to lean into uncertainty, which is happening in a conversation, in a hard conversation, if you're bringing something up or someone else is bringing it up with you. And so we've got to be able to to get ourselves to a place of emotional intelligence where we can expand our capacity to handle that. And yeah.
Actually, Katie, I wondered if you might explain to the listeners, why would somebody have you come into their family farm? What's the process and where do you sit in that succession line?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my position, and I'm always a believer in this, and I said it earlier, is I'm all about prevention. And so for me, it's if people realise that there is some sticking points, and this is early before succession, right? These are where we already know that there's some friction points so when we get to succession, it actually becomes easier.
So you're the pre-succession communication lady. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Because what succession needs is they need frequent conversations. And so we have to ensure that the systems of communication that we're employing are done earlier so that when it comes to the hard conversation, we've already got some ways of thinking, understanding each other and how the communication works. Because I tell you what, I don't know about you guys, but I've been married for nearly, 19 years this year, and I'm still learning stuff about my husband. And so for me, it's like, how do we get ourselves into a place where we're learning respectful communication, we're learning how to listen, we're learning how to help others feel like they are heard, so that when it does come to those hard conversations, we're not fighting for our opinion, we're not coming in as bulls at a gate. We're not also trapping people in the yards. You know how if you have a wild beast and you trap him in there, he's going to feel that. So we also want to be able to navigate. And that's my whole ethos, is get in early, have conversations more frequently, repair. Because just like going to the gym, I was saying earlier, the muscles, when we go to the gym, we're actually breaking the muscles. We're actually pulling them apart to bring them back to make them stronger. So the more often we can have conversations, the more frequently we've created the space to have safe conversations. When it comes to succession, it becomes so much easier because you can already navigate that, because you understand yourself, you understand others, and you have the tools that can help you be really agile in your conversations.
Katie, the art of hard talk, what is that?
It's the science and the magic of having conversations. It's really understanding how other people receive information, understanding yourself, so that you can have these hard conversations. It's the art and science, bringing it all together, because communication isn't just a system or an operation or a process. Yeah. There are real humans behind it with emotions, ways of being, decision, like the way they make decision. They've got certain ways that they do that. So for me, it's about learning both, learning the art and how to do it and how to maneuver, because no conversation is the same. And so having yourself at a place where you have the skill set, the science behind it, and you also have the heart, when you bring those two together, that's where the magic can happen.
Do you train people inside of this specifically?
I train. In what way? Can you explain a little bit more?
Do you help people, or can you is there any way that people can learn the art of hard talk from you specifically? As in, can they sit with you and be tutored or mentored by you?
Well, can I just, before you answer that, Katie, just to add to that, I was going to ask, in a very practical sense on the ground, if we had a farming scenario with patriarch dad and mum, and then you've got sons and their wives or whatever.
Yeah.
Is it that you work with, say, the patriarch in a different way, different capacity to help? Yeah, just in conjunction with what Josh is saying, what would it look like in an example form on the ground?
I'm sort of looking at it, if you're somebody who's you've got the issue, and then there's one that goes, I need to somehow be able to affect this area. Can you help me to affect this? Because they're not even wanting to come to the table at this point. but I need to stop triggering the living daylights out of everybody. How do you help me?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do both. So if it's all right, I'll answer both questions for you. The work that I do, there is facilitation with families where I actually teach them the art of, like, the science behind communication, and we actually discover everybody's communication styles, how they communicate, how they like to receive it, what they look like under pressure, what their behaviours show up as, what they mean, and how we can communicate really clearly with different people. That's one thing that I do. So you can learn that art and you can find it out. The other thing that I find is really effective, maybe a whole new word, is the idea of working with the person who wants to make the change. I truly believe, and I work with a lot of people one-on-one, and we do that. We work on how do they navigate these conversations. And that's what we do. We brainstorm, we plan, we listen. Because one of my gifts is to be able to hear what's not being said or to understand patterns of communication. And when I get involved in a conversation, I can start to hear things that maybe they can't hear. And it could be something for them or it could be for the other person. And so it doesn't matter what industry. I've worked with people for their children. I've worked with people for their career that they're in. I've worked with people in their family. So they just want to be able to communicate with their family, and no one else wants to be at the table, which is, I think, is fine, but they do. And it's like, if it's on your heart and you really want to make a change and you are willing to do whatever it takes, then you absolutely can learn the art of that.
So, sorry, you finish. Sorry.
No, that's okay. You go.
Well, just so if you had someone, you mentioned that you're able to see what's not being said or hear what's underneath there. How would you coax somebody or, gently pull them forward to create honesty in what they're actually saying? When you listen to what they say, but they're not actually telling you the whole truth, how would you kind of get them to bring forth what's really going on for them without triggering them or without, it's probably easier for you because you're not close to the person.
Yes.
But I definitely know people when they speak to me. I'm a very what you see is what you get. What I say is what I'm thinking. There's not a lot of filter. And when I receive communication and I know someone's not being honest with me and they're not being who they really are or they're not sharing their true thoughts, I find that really difficult to cope with because I'm a very honest person. So I struggle with that. However, I don't like to make people feel uncomfortable. So I'm wondering how you can navigate a conversation like that.
Yeah, great question. When it's in with me one-on-one, there's definitely ways that I communicate and connect with people that bring it forth. And I can do that because they're with me, they're willing, they want to do it, they want to make the change. So there's a difference. Yeah. If we're just out in communication with someone, say it's our children, say it's another family member, say it's a worker in the environment, you've got to ensure that there's been enough safe spots because some people need more safety than others. So for you, Steph, it's like, I'm just here, this is what it is, which is generally my style of communicating as well. Whereas for others, they need that time. So one of the biggest things that we can do is just, if we feel like there's something not being said that needs to be said, if you try and force it out, you're going to create more shutdown.
Yeah.
So the thing that you want to really be doing is just getting curious and slowing down. Getting really curious and looking at that person, knowing that it's there. We don't actually know that they're not telling us the truth, number one. We have a sense, we have a feeling, we're like, there's a little bell going, ting-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling, hang on a second. And what we can do is we can, depending on the situation, scenario, who the person is we can gently ask them. And so if they're saying, we can sometimes sit there, for example, let me rewind to a moment. So you can sit there and actually say to them, hey, it just seems like there's something on your heart.
Okay.
Would you be open to sharing it? Notice my tonality. I even, if your people are listening and not watching, I even sort of softened my body and I looked away and I got really curious and I looked as though I really wanted to know, because I would imagine most people who do want to know, in their heart of hearts, It's so they can be connected. It's so that they can help them out. It's so that they can make some sort of impact or support them or love them. It's just that some people need a little bit more safety than that. Now, the thing is we have to also learn to respect if they don't want to.
Yeah, and that's hard because sometimes it's like, you want to make it about, at the time you've got to, this game takes a lot of control, because if you are, obviously if you're in the pit with them, if you're the one that's suffering because of the circumstance associated, it's very, very difficult to remove yourself and your circumstance and your pain and your frustration and your stories and all that jazz out the door, so that you can actually handle or help tease out what is actually going on inside of the member in front of you, family member, brother, sister, mother, father, whatever it might be. And and for some of us, we look at that and we go, there's just no way I can do that. This is a very difficult, subtle art in some ways. Some people are really good and actually can do it, but it really takes a lot of presence. And if you're in the middle of it, and that's why so much of this needs to be outsourced, because we can't actually do it. It takes a great strength of will, but also character and presence to be able to recognize I need to humble the living shit out of myself before I can actually affect this space. I can't, if I'm holding on to this stuff, there's just no way. And we have to be deadly honest with ourselves in this. It's like, you want to keep this in-house? Really? Really? Okay. Good luck with that. We'll be at your clearing sale. True.
I think I want to add a piece there though too, is that there is this misconception that you don't have to feel anything.
Yeah, okay.
We talk about pushing everything to the side so we can come in this conversation. We are humans and we cannot necessarily do that. I know myself, I don't control, I try to move through my emotions while I'm in the conversation. So if it's hard, it's about, okay, what do I need to do? And so if I feel myself, can I give an example for your audience?
Please,
is that all right?
yes. Examples are great.
If I feel myself heating up in a moment, because my tendency is to go hot, it's either I'll go hot or shut down. And so if I am feeling the heat, what I do is I can feel my body tense up. You know the feeling when you're in that moment, right? Jaw tightens, body stiffens, your hands, you don't breathe, you're kind of rigid in everything. One of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves is movement, because the emotion that's inside of us is energy in motion. That's it. And so if we're tensed up, frozen, like teeth gritting, one of the things that we can do is actually just shift our physiology, because shifting our physiology sends a signal to the brain that says, I'm safe. Because really that internal, whatever it is that's going on for you, the fight, the flight, the freeze, whatever that is ours to own and be responsible for. And so by moving our body, we can do that.
You mean like a jump around, a little walk, a slap your face? What do you mean by a movement?
Well, it depends. If it's before the conversation, I will jump. I'll move my body. I'll get it out because I know it just needs to move. And so I'll jump around. I'll go outside. Yeah, I'll shake, whatever it is, dance around to a song, get myself in a resourceful state. However, if I'm in the conversation, I can't do that. Imagine me standing up in the middle of a family meeting going, hold on a second, guys, let me shimmy for a second. It's not going to land. But what I can do is I can just take a deep breath in through my nose and then drop my jaw and just let the air come out naturally. Now, I did get asked by a lady once, it was by a daughter, and she said, Mum does that and it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And I said, here's the thing. I said, is Mum doing it audibly? Can you hear her? She said, oh, yeah, she does this.
It's such a mum thing to do.
Yeah, it's such a mum
It's like
thing.
when you're frustrated that no one's helping you with the cleaning up and you slam the plates a bit harder and
right, that's the energy coming through, right? It's literally just the energy. And all of this, what I'd love people to see is that there's nothing wrong with these responses in our body. It's just data letting us know that something is either going against our value or against our belief, or we want to fight for it. And that's okay. It's just data. But if you're in a call, like I sometimes under the table will just move my hands, like literally move my hands, put them together, rub them, so that my body is moving. I might even just shift in my chair a little bit. If I'm feeling like I want to fight and I'm on the front of my chair, then I'll just literally sit back in my chair, drop my shoulder and look away from the table. Just for a second. Like, it doesn't have to be long. It can just be like I'm contemplating. I usually look up. If I can give your listeners this as well, when you look up, you are less likely to access any emotional feelings in your body.
Wow. I'm doing all this in the background, by the way, team.
Yeah, I'm loving watching you do it. It's like live action scenes. If you guys aren't watching this, you need to. It's fabulous. But if we look up, we actually access a different part of our brain that allows us to come back online. Because when those hot moments happen, it's kind of like we lose our brain. It's like it just gets to the side and you can't find your words. You all of a sudden don't know what you want to say anymore. Or you say something, you think, well, that came out the way I didn't want it to. All we're looking to do is give ourselves enough of a heartbeat to be able to bring our prefrontal cortex back online, which is the thinking brain. And so literally shifting your body, looking up, looking out as though you're curious. It doesn't make the other people feel like you don't roll your eyes. You know, all of those little subtle cues that we have, because everybody is reading every single thing that you do.
Yeah.
Unconsciously, whether they have studied it like I have or whether they have not. They are reading it and making meaning of it straight away. So relax the body, move the body. Or if you're feeling like you're wanting to hide, sit up in your chair, put your shoulders back. Sit in a place where you're like, actually, I'm confident here. Even if you're totally not confident, you're the total opposite. Put yourself in the place where you can be. There's such little cues we can do to help ourselves navigate, and that's part of the art of communication.
I actually want to take you back, Katie, to something you said before, which really interests me on a kid level. So sometimes with our kids, we do tell them to control themselves, to control their emotions, because there's also a part of us that's like, you need to function as well, and we need to get going. We need to control ourselves. Let's move. Are you suggesting that a better way of helping them through those big feelings is to tell them to move through their emotions rather than control them and clamp them down? Like, what's the language that you used with your kids when they were young?
Well, you know what? I wasn't gifted what I know now when my kids were little. So I can completely appreciate where you're at, because I did the same. You know, I had one that was a little hot and heavy, and I just didn't know what to do with his. So it's kind of like, stop.
Yes, we say it a lot.
No.
That's enough.
Yeah.
Calm you down.
Stop. Yep. So really, it's only 90 seconds that we go through an emotion unless we add story to it. So with my kids, what I used to do is get them to express their emotions resourcefully. So it's okay that you're angry. What I say to them, what's not okay is that you're yelling at me. If you need to blow off steam, you need to go into your bedroom or you need to go outside and we'll come back. So what we're wanting to do as parents, and this is controversial, so I'm excited to see, because there are so many different ways to manage parenting and this sort of work. What I have found for my boys that worked best was if we were out in public and there was something, then it would be like, just look at them and I would help them self-regulate. Mate, you need to take a breath in, breathe out, we're moving. I would just grab their hand if they were having a complete tantrum. I would just grab their hand and take them out. Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
And off we go. There was no reprimand at the time, because they're not going to listen to you anyway. They're not going to, because when they're in that heightened emotional state, their brain is not online. Their brains are still developing. They're so little. Even up till, I think it's 23 or 25, the brain is still developing. And so one of my biggest gifts I've given was to be able to help my son express his emotion in healthy ways. And a healthy way was never to yell at us, was never to hit us, was never to, and so we would just redirect the behavior. And we would say no. That was a big thing as well, you know, like if someone hits, then it was a big no. But what I do encourage is what you said, get them to move through the emotion. If you want to go outside and kick a footy, go and move through the emotion out there.
So you actually use that terminology. You say, mate, we're just going to move through this emotion. Whatever you need to do that, go and take some time to do it and come back.
Most of the time. Like
if you're in an environment where that's a possibility, of course.
Yes. Yeah, and if they've not lost it too much. Because sometimes what kids need is less words.
Yeah.
They That my boys, sometimes what I would say to them is outside to kick a ball.
Yeah.
And that would be it.
Keep
There's
it
no trying to have a conversation with them. Other times I could be, you need to move through this outside.
Katie, it's something that I think that, like, just taking it back to the business aspect. And,
Yes, thank you for the segue to the children, for the parents.
You're welcome to all our parents out there. You're welcome. Parenting is hard. Parenting in itself is its own personal
and that's the
development.
thing. It doesn't stop. It doesn't.
I was
stop.
asking out for us.
Sometimes it affects. Oh yeah, everyone could use more help than that. Absolutely, that is a tricky space. But but it doesn't sort of stop. It keeps coming on. The reason why we're finding this conversation so vital, and is because what I've recognised through my time inside of a family organisation, what I've seen through other friends, families, and things like that, is the sheer destructive force of not being able to communicate, not being able to come to an understanding, not coming to recognise where each other is coming from, to assume that they don't want to have anything to do with you, or they're this or they're that, without actually. And so the stories that occur inside of the mind as a result of the traumas that flare up because of a lot of what goes on. I mean, this is the thing. There's a lot of pressure, as we know, inside of the industry. There's a lot of fights because of the pressure. We don't know how to handle that. We can handle stock. We can handle weather. We can handle a lot of those other areas. But when it comes to things like this, where it's real, it's very raw, there's nothing more relevant really than being able to step into the ring with those who you love and be able to actually, bring this together so that it's not destroyed and so that this doesn't fall apart. Like, it's sort of like the whole family. There's going to be tantrums. We have tantrums. Yeah. And like you said, which is very interesting, unless story is added, 90 seconds is about it. Well, we have a wealth of stories over the years accumulated. Mm-hmm. An absolute treasure trove. A dragon will sit on top of that. Okay? And it's like, okay, how are we going to address that? Like, how do we, it's like, where do we start with such a mess like that? And so it's something I'm very grateful for, is to be able to sit and have this conversation with you, Katie, because it is important for everybody to know that people like Katie Godden exist, and they can help us facilitate those conversations when we feel lost beyond reckoning. And that's something that I want everybody to recognize, is that you're not alone. One, your problems, although they are your problems, they are not unique problems. They're not different. They're just happening to you. Well, we would be fooled to think that our situation is different. And there's so many times I've heard, oh, but you don't know my dad. I'm like, you want to bet your ass on that, mate? You're describing my old man. Okay? Yeah. And then Joe over here would say, and mine. It's like, yeah, how about that? We're all in this tussle together. So you're not alone. There is help, but you've got to be brave enough to get out there and ask for it.
Yeah. And I think do it early. The earlier you can do it, the better too. I think that's really important, because farmers are so damn resilient. They are so resilient. And I just love the way they handle life. I love the get up and go. I love the way that farmers are so connected to the land, connected to each other, because there is a lot of that. And in amongst it is also this difference in communication. I'd love to call it that. There's a difference in communication, and the more that we can understand each other, not from a place of I want to people please everybody, but just to get it, because your listeners will hear this too and they'll feel it, is the fact that people don't actually have to come to you with a solution. When you feel heard, you actually feel like you can handle anything.
Very interesting. Absolutely.
Because I don't necessarily need my husband to solve everything for me, or to, for us to go like a bull at a gate to find solutions and go through that. Yes, of course, there are times that we can do that, But there are other times where I actually don't need him to say anything. I just need him to hear what I'm saying, and I need to know that he's heard me.
Yes.
And that is for me the biggest skill set that anybody, if your audience out there is wanting to learn how to be a better communicator, one would be to pause, but the second one would be how do the people around you need communication delivered so that they feel heard.
Yeah.
Every wife I speak to, every child I speak to, it doesn't matter what generation, every husband, the husbands are a little bit more quiet about it, but it comes through, is that they just don't feel like they're heard. And when that happens, that's actually a huge piece of what creates the fractures. And people don't know what to do when they don't feel like they're being heard. And so what they'll do is they'll then what people would call misbehave.
Well, certainly with kids, that's their go-to. If you wanted to simplify it, they naturally misbehave when they want to be heard.
Yeah, they're just so frustrated because they're not being heard. Yep. And so they'll talk over each other, or they'll yell, or they'll shut down and be quiet and walk away, and it'll be like an ice bath. And so there's all these different ways. When we're not heard, there's a response that people give. And when you can recognize that response, so I know with my eldest, when he shuts down, I know that I haven't let him feel heard. I've missed the mark. And so I'm like, when my other one speaks up at me, I missed something. Like there was something that I didn't hear that he was trying to say to me.
It's so hard because it takes so much of your own effort and time and patience. It truly is coming back to what Josh was saying. You truly are suffering for love in those circumstances. For you to check yourself like that and go, oh, okay. Because I can think of a million times when my eldest hasn't felt heard. I know exactly what you're talking about because she responds in a specific way and I know. But I also am like, well, too bad. You know, that's my response because it takes a lot of effort for me then to turn around and go and reiterate what happened and allow her to be heard. I'm kind of, you know, I fall into that trap. And I'm definitely throwing myself under the bus as a mum. But I think we all do this of being like, oh, well, too bad, so sad, move on. You know?
Yeah. And I think there's nothing wrong with doing it. I don't think we make or break our kids in one moment.
No, but
I don't think, you know, like I want to put it out there to people. It's because I still do the same. There'll be times when my kids don't feel heard and communication is my jam.
I think that's important, though, Katie. It's like we can't have our kids thinking that the world revolves around them either. Like it's good for them to be heard, but they're not a place of worship. I mean, they've got to be able to fit into this world. And hey, tough titties. That's the way it goes.
It's finding the balance because what you're talking about, Steph, is true. When we're in that moment of it's like it's hard for us now. The thing that has helped me be able to take more moments where I can recognize it or I move into it is because of my vision. My vision is to be connected with my boys over a lifetime. And so when I have that, it actually doesn't feel as painful to me to have to stop and give them the communication the way they need to receive it or to listen or to apologize because that's my vision and nothing will sway me from that.
Oh, I just love that because recently our eldest goes to boarding school next year, and recently I switched the way that I think about spending time with her because obviously time is getting very, very short. And although she needs to go to bed, and I understand that, last night she came and she got into bed with me. Josh was already fast asleep. And we just laid on the pillow together chatting because in my mind, my bigger goal was spend every moment I can with you until you have to go to boarding school. So I that actually makes a lot of sense. And if I could apply that knowledge to my communication with her because I want her to feel heard so that she keeps communicating with me when she's away, all of a sudden I'm not going to feel like it's a difficult thing. I feel like I could get teary about this. And you
know what? But I think this is, if we can pause on this for a minute and really just like be in that space, Steph, because this is the hardest thing. It doesn't matter what generation you are from. A parent's love for their child is the driving force behind a lot of what's going on. And what you're talking about here, Steph, is real. I've got my son who's almost finished high school, and I have the same transition phase. It's like, oh, my boy, I've got 5 more, not even, what have I got? 4 more terms with him as a student at school. And then he's off, going to make his life, going to do his thing. And my mission was to create incredible young men to go out into the world. And then I'm like, oh, hang on, that's coming very close to an end. Oh, I'm not finished being your mum. Like, I'm not complete. Hang on. So I stretched my vision. And that's where it's like, you know what, connected over a lifetime. And it's a real thing that we go through on the farm when we do send our kids away to boarding school, when our kids go off and do their own job, if they don't stay on the farm. It's like there's this instinct inside of us that is calling for that connection for a lifetime. And whether that's what you notice it as or not, that was the point I got to. And I think, you know, we're all here for connection. We're all here, like you said, Josh, before, for love. And I don't find I suffer as much when I've got the long distance goal of being connected over a lifetime. We can make it through anything. That's my thinking. And so that mindset shift, I think it's a real piece that you're addressing. And I think your audience will very much feel exactly where you're at. And so I think we need to recognize that and speak about it more often.
One of the things I found this really interesting was in regards to being heard is the difference between the way that men and women receive that conversation or receive that particular thing, because like you said, like men here a little bit, or husbands here a little bit quieter, and from what I've
you said they're a little bit quieter about whether they're heard or not. Is that what you were saying? You said women are quiet.
Yeah, I remember saying it. I just can't remember exactly the context.
I'll give you the context. You said women are quite, outspoken or quite forward in saying they don't feel heard.
That's right.
Men are a little bit quieter about that.
Thank you. Yes, thanks for rewinding me back to the place. Depending on who they are, like it's the general consensus, right? I'm going to do a broad generalization, is that they are less likely to say that they're not heard because they don't necessarily want to tap into that part of the vulnerability. Is from research that I've done, from experience, from talking, they may not feel like it's a safe time to say it, because when it comes to male and female, there's also not only personality, behavioural profiling, there's not only the experience that we've learnt growing up, but there's also this, men are here to protect. Yeah. Men are here to provide. Like, this is the innate tendency that they have, to fornicate. Like, these are the main things that they're there to do. And so their identity is based around that. And so if part of their identity is that if I share emotions, it is weak, or I look like I know some words that come through from what guys used to say at school, but that are probably not appropriate for the air, but they say these things to themselves. They have this belief that they can't say it.
Like they're a sook or a pussy or something like that.
Pussy, that's a great word. Yeah. Yes, that they're a bit of a wuss. Yes.
It's true.
Yeah, it is true. And I think that we can't make generalizations about male and female in communication, because there are some men who love to talk and are really quite open with their emotions, quite open with where they're at. There are other men that are not. There are some men that need to externally process, so they need to speak it out loud in order to make sense of it.
Yep.
And there are some men that do that inside their head. Women are the same. I am a person who likes to externally process. So if there's something going on for me, I need to hear it outside of my head, otherwise I circle. So I have to get it outside of me to make sense of it and sometimes make decisions. Yep. So, for example, I'll talk to Aaron and I'll just speak to him, and then I look at him and I say, I'm good, I've got this, and I'll walk away. He has said nothing. But then there are other women who they process it internally and then they'll speak. So the pattern does not always mean that it comes from a specific gender, and it's usually like a meaning that we have attached to it or our style.
It's interesting you say that, because I'm the same. I like to I'll externally like
You'll speak to think.
Yeah, I'll speak to think.
Yes,
not
that's
think before
basically it.
speaking. And so I think that there's absolutely, like, we're all very similar in that regard. I think that's just a human trait, 100%. The aspect of what I've come to learn regarding the difference in which men and women operate between in sort of this kind of space is that whilst women, like, when you feel heard, okay, and are speaking these things out, and when there is truly, you do feel heard, there's a restoration that comes with that. Like you were saying, it's like you can feel like you can do. There's so much that, like, really, it closes gaps and it calms the storm, and it's a very healing thing when you are actually being heard. For men, and I've done a lot inside of the men's space previously, specifically men, is that we can speak, but then we want to know what to do. Like, we have to have a plan of attack. We're tactical and we want that order. That's our masculine mind going, right, great. I'm not just here to have to be heard by you. What do you got for me? Okay, because I need this fixed tomorrow, like today.
Which is what men like to do for women.
And that's
and
where
women are like, no, we're
we go
good.
wrong.
We're
Like, I just
fine.
think, you
Just
try and
listen
fix,
to me.
If I try and say, well, I've got to fix you, and this is like talking to into the marriage space a bit on this, it's that if you're a bloke and you try and fix her, you're an idiot. Like, truly, back out. You can't fix her. That's not your zone at all. You are there to simply sit, reflect, and if you can help, ask, what do you need? Not what can I do, what do you need? Because otherwise, you're going to find yourself in a world of pain, because she doesn't need fixing at all. She just needs you to know what she's currently going through, and that she's heard, and that you understand that. But for men, it's like, I need to know what it is that is wrong with this, so I can fix this, so I can fix this, and I can affect that. And I got to get going. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I would agree to a degree. I'd also love to challenge it a little bit. I live with 3 boys. So boys, and interestingly enough, I studied, when I was in education, I studied boys' education predominantly because I wanted to understand boys. I have no idea why. It was just a calling. So I did every course that I could to be a great teacher, because boys, I found they were not so great in the classroom.
Yeah.
No surprise to anybody. And I actually spoke one day, I was with a group of men. There was about 5 of them there. And there was a woman who was talking, and she was sharing her insights about, she had 3 boys, and she was talking and talking and talking and talking and wanting to know how to help, like how to have conversations, how to help them open up, how to do all these things. And she was just talking. And I sat there, and she just looked straight at me, because I have a husband and I have 2 boys. And she's like, what do I do? And she was in desperation, because she just wanted so much to be an amazing mum. And I said, from my perspective, and then I got the men's. So I said, well, let me share with you from my perspective. As women, we need to shut up and listen to the men more.
Yeah.
And 2 of the guys looked at me and smiled and nodded. And I said, what I've learned is that my boys need me to listen. And so one of the gifts that I've given myself is the fact that I ask my boys, is this something that you need solved, or do you just need me to hear you out?
That's good.
And that goes both genders.
Yep.
So I've done it with my husband as well. I said, do you need me to just hear you out? Are you venting, or do you want to find solutions? Because my mind goes straight to solutions. I'm like you, like, come on, let's go. Let's plan of attack. How are we going to get through this? How are we going to stop it? Blah, 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 blah. But he will say to me, I don't need you to solve my problem. I need you to listen. And so straight away, I know how to behave. And when I spoke to these young men, I just looked at them and I said, so what is it that you need so that you feel heard? And they said, we just need people to not speak over us. I found that fascinating. I was like, oh yeah. And I'm sure that there's women out there that are the same.
I think as women, we do that a lot to our men, hugely.
Yeah.
I do it to
Yeah.
Josh all the time, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I've done it before. And asking them for their opinion on it. Because they are innately there to protect, to come up with solutions, to, like, that's their innate sense of who they be. And so asking them, like, what are your thoughts on this? Makes them feel valued, makes them feel
Yes.
heard
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So I think they do want to be heard and they want to know how to get out of it. I would agree. They're very much action taking. I think the key for us is what's not done well is acknowledgement. And that's the piece that lets people feel heard.
And I think you've put a very good point there, Katie, is that it's like it's in that moment, it's like, do you want
the
a course, do you want a
clarification.
course of action, you just want to be heard? And it's like, are you just venting? And if it's just a venting, then okay, I'm here to hear you out. I think that's a very important part of that as well. Yeah.
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 And I think because you hit on it too, is like, what do they need? The men asking the women, what do they need? Sometimes women are not great at that. They actually don't know what they need, particularly if they've been a mum for a while, because all they've worried about is everybody else's needs. They've never looked at themselves. And so if that question doesn't support it, then you can just give them two options and get them to choose. And they will find a liberation in that. They will already feel supported just by giving them the two options.
It's funny that you suggest that, because that's what I do for my kids when I want them to feel like they're in some form of control, but I'm really controlling the outcome.
It's called a double blind. In NLP, it's called a double blind. Yeah. To move things. Are you going to brush your teeth now or in 10 minutes?
Yeah, exactly. Either way, you're brushing your teeth.
You're brushing your teeth.
That's it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you will use that strategy on me, my love.
I mean, of course, use with caution.
Oh yeah.
Disclaimer.
Absolutely.
yeah. Totally.
Oh, that's cool.
No, beautiful. No.
Yeah.
Katie Godden, thank you so much for coming on the High Ground podcast. Really appreciated this conversation. Appreciated your time, and that this will not be the last time that we have you on this or on other platforms. So, thanks again for everything you've shared with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been a great conversation.